Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I am going to explain a South Korean fantasy film called Vanishing Time, A Boy Who Returned. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. At the start of the movie, a child psychiatrist interviews a girl named Soo-rin. Soo-rin gets visibly nervous when the doctor sets up a camera to record the interview. She asks her to recite her story from the beginning. Soo-rin starts by saying that her mother married Do-kyun some years ago. Soon after the marriage, her mother passed away, and since then, Soo-rin has been living with Do-kyun. He is appointed to a construction site on a ruler island named Hwano, so the two have to move to the island. Since her mother's death, Soo-rin has never truly been happy. She doesn't talk much and isn't fond of her stepfather. She is enrolled in a new school on the island, where she has the opportunity to make many friends, but even then, she prefers staying alone. Her stepfather has to work overnight as the chief of a tunnel construction site. Because of the explosions that take place during the construction, the inhabitants of the island are forbidden from entering the construction area. One night, Soo-rin goes through her phone and reads comments on her blog about a wormhole. When her mother died, Soo-rin wanted to run away from the world, and while researching ways to do that, she started to gain interest in wormholes, supernatural beings, and so on. She talks to people on the internet about such topics, even on the school's computer. She accidentally leaves her computer open, which allows her classmates to read her comments and make fun of her. While returning home, Soo-rin meets a boy named Sung-min who lives in an orphanage. Sung-min introduces himself and tries to befriend Soo-rin, but she ignores him. The next day during lunch, Soo-rin comes across Sung-min and his friends talking about her blog on the wormhole. Sung-min claims to have entered another dimension after reading it. That day, Sung-min follows her as she is walking home. On being called out, he says that he believes everything that she has written in the blog. Out of their shared interest in supernatural processes, the two become friends. Soo-rin has developed her own alphabet to communicate with Sung-min in secret. They begin to use it daily to leave each other notes in Soo-rin's diary. Every day after school, they go around town looking for ghosts. In one of such expeditions, Sung-min brings Soo-rin to an abandoned wooden house in the forest. They explore the house and talk for a long time while carving on wax blocks. Soo-rin has started to fall in love with Sung-min. She kisses him out of the blue, making him flustered. One day, Soo-rin finds Sung-min and three of his friends planning to go to the construction site to watch the explosions. She joins them, and the kids make their way through the woods so the grown-ups won't see them. When they cross the fence to the site, one of the kids chickens out and runs back home. That kid will probably go to university someday. The other four hide behind a cliff waiting, but are disappointed when no explosions take place. While walking through the forest, they come across a tiny cave. They decide to explore it and go inside one after another. Eventually, they come across a bright glowing substance submerged in water at the end of the cave. Soo-rin assumes that it is a meteoroid. Sung-min takes it upon himself to dive into the water and bring the substance out. On being brought out of the tunnel, the thing stops glowing. The kids notice that it looks like an egg. One of the guys named Tai-shik claims that the egg might belong to a time goblin. Whatever Tai-shik is on, I want some. His grandfather had once told him that on full moon nights, a cave appears in the mountains where the time goblin lives. Whoever goes into the cave will come out as an older person. The other kids do not believe him, since they didn't age. Soo-rin discovers that her hairpin, which was a gift from her mother, is missing. She goes back into the cave to look for it as the guys guard the egg. She finds her pin, but also notices that the glowing egg is back in the water. Confused, she comes out to see that the egg has broken and all of her friends are missing. She looks for them all around the forest until it gets dark. She is eventually lost in the woods and has to stay the night. The following day, a police force looks for the kids in the woods. Detective An is made the head of the investigation. Soon, the police find Soo-rin unconscious in the woods. Fortunately, she is alive and well. In the hospital, the detective asks her what happened to the other guys, and she tells him everything about the cave and the glowing egg. The detective and the adults do not believe her story. She even takes them to the forest to show them the cave, but cannot find it. It is almost as if it disappeared after the full moon night. Then, the detective is informed that the corpse of one of the missing boys, Jai Wook, has been found underground on a beach 20 kilometers away from the town. It is revealed that the cause of his death was an asthma attack. Since someone had to bury him underground, the case turns from missing person to kidnapping. Weeks pass after the incident, but the other two boys are not found. Without Sung-min, Soo-rin reverts to her old introverted self. She too is as confused as anyone, but no one believes her when she says the truth. One day, she hears a noise from outside her house. On checking, she sees a man running to the woods. She follows him and enters deep into the forest. After a few minutes of running, she falls to the ground and the man also stops. He approaches her and looks at her in fascination as Soo-rin freezes in shock. The man speaks for the first time and claims that he is Sung-min. Upon hearing his name, Soo-rin comes out of her shocked state and runs away, crying. She ends up in front of Do-kyun's car and hastily tells him about the man. The police are informed about the incident, and they start searching the woods to look for the man, assuming that he is the kidnapper. Detective An asks Soo-rin about the man, and she reveals that he was pretending to be Sung-min. The policemen do not find the kidnapper, but they get their hands on Soo-rin's diary that she and Sung-min used to leave notes for each other. On seeing the pages, she is surprised because they are filled with Sung-min's notes. Using their code language, he has written about everything that happened after she went into the cave to get her hairpin. The guys get curious about what is inside the egg, so Sung-min breaks it on the ground without waiting for Soo-rin. To their disappointment, it turns out to be empty. When Soo-rin doesn't return for a while, Sung-min goes inside the cave and sees that she has frozen in her place. He tries to talk to her and move her, but she doesn't respond. Moments later, he notices a drop of water levitating midair. He comes out of the cave and looks upwards to see that the birds have also frozen in the air. The boys go to the town and see that everyone, including their families, have paused. This makes them realize that time has frozen for everyone, except the three of them, meaning that they can do anything they want. For the first few days, they are on top of the world. They eat and drink whatever they like, sleep whenever they want to, and play around the entire day. After a month or so, they get bored, so they decide to leave the island and go to another city to see if they are actually the only people on Earth who can move. However, their plan is spoiled when they realize that the water in the ocean has also stopped flowing, which means that the boat will sink. Back in the present, Soo-rin registers that the man who approached her in the woods was in fact Sung-min. She stops reading, as now getting the police away from him is her first priority. If they find him, they will surely arrest him for being the kidnapper, so she claims to have lied about seeing anyone in the forest. The police believe her, and she continues reading the journal. Many months later, the guys start to live inside a tent in the mall. Jai Wook's health gets worse by the day because he has asthma and his inhaler stops working. One night, he suffocates and slowly passes away in front of his friends. Sung-min and Tae-shik are devastated. With a heavy heart, they bury their friend's corpse under the ground on a nearby beach. After dying, Jai Wook's body also pauses like the others. 5 years pass, but the world remains the same. The guys have now grown into teenagers. Although they have been living in isolation for so many years, they still hope that someday the world will go back to normal. Sung-min believes that when they turn 20, their time will resume. They steal a little bit of money from everyone to be rich when that happens. However, even when they turn 20, nothing changes. They slowly begin to lose hope and start to live in the wooden house in the forest. One day, the isolation gets the best of Sung-min. In a scene straight out of my COVID diaries, he screams and yells for it all to stop. Tae-shik witnesses this from afar and loses all hope. Some days later, Sung-min notices that the moon's shape is changing, meaning that the world is about to resume course. He goes looking for Tae-shik, but doesn't find him anywhere. He searches for him throughout the island and eventually reaches the last cliff. There, he discovers Taishik's clothes on the ground and registers that his friend has jumped into the water. He also jumps after Taishik as a last resort, but at that very moment, the world resumes. He comes out of the water and is mesmerized by the moving nature. After reading the journal, Su-rin runs to the wooden house and finally sees her friend. They decide to tell the story to the world, but are unsure if anyone will believe them. Meanwhile, CCTV footage shows the police that Sung-min is in the woods. They believe he is the kidnapper. At night, Sung-min comes to Su-rin's room for emotional support. Since he has been living alone for such a long time, he is scared he will harm himself to get rid of the pain. The next day, Taishik's parents arrive at the construction site, blaming Do-kyun for their kid's disappearance. They believe that the explosion in the site killed their son, and Su-rin is making up stories to save her stepfather. Meanwhile, Su-rin and Sung-min go to the orphanage that Sung-min used to stay in. Su-rin explains everything to the warden and comes outside to call Sung-min. However, she is dragged away by her father just then. Sung-min approaches his mother-like warden and tells her everything he used to do as a kid. She is shocked, but she still doesn't believe him. Do-kyun locks Su-rin in her room at night, but Sung-min enters through the back door and frees her. Together, they run away from the house to decide what they should do next. Su-rin remembers seeing a second egg in the cave. She suggests she uses the egg and returns as an adult to prove to the others that Sung-min is innocent. However, Sung-min is against the idea because he knows how difficult it is to live in isolation. He would rather be named a kidnapper than let her go through what he felt in the past years. Do-kyun sees that his daughter is missing and figures she went to the wooden house after finding a picture of her and Sung-min on her phone. He goes there at night, attacks Sung-min, and tries to take Su-rin back home, but Sung-min knocks him out and runs away with her. The next day, the police investigate the wooden house and believe that the kidnapper is manipulating Su-rin by making her believe he is Sung-min. The news about Su-rin's disappearance is on TV, so the police soon find the two. A chase ensues between them and the police when Su-rin turns herself in to save Sung-min. Before separating, she asks him to meet her at the cave. Detective An tries to make Su-rin understand that the kidnapper is lying to her, but she doesn't believe him. She makes an excuse of wanting to go to the bathroom and runs away to the cave. She brings the glowing egg out and hands it to Sung-min, but he refuses to return it to her because he doesn't want her to use it. He is about to turn himself in and take the blame for killing his friends. He runs away into the woods as Su-rin follows him. At the same time, the police arrive and chase them. They stop at the edge of a cliff. An officer grabs Sung-min and pushes Su-rin off the cliff in the process. The detective helps Su-rin, but ends up hanging off the cliff with her. Sung-min tries to save them, but before he can, they both fall back. In order to save them, Sung-min breaks the egg again and stops time. When Su-rin wakes up a few seconds later, she is on a beach with the detective. She realizes what Sung-min has just done. Although it has only been a moment for her, for Sung-min, it must have been another decade. She is then taken back home. While eating dinner, she apologizes to her father for everything she has done and calls him Dad for the first time. The detective comes to inquire how they survived the fall. Su-rin doesn't answer, but he figures out that she was telling the truth this entire time. He suggests she give a false statement to the media and say that the kidnapper had manipulated her. This way, the people who are accusing her of killing her friends, along with the kidnapper, will be proved wrong. Su-rin is finally done telling her story to the psychiatrist. She is left stunned after listening to it all and wants to write a book on it. Some months later, Su-rin is moving to a different city for high school. Before leaving, she meets the psychiatrist who gives her the book which has now been published. So much for doctor-patient confidentiality. On her way to the ferry, Su-rin sees Sung-min through her car window and runs to meet him, but finds no one. But sometime later, the two meet on the deck. The movie ends as
On the beaches of Peru, a fisherman goes out on his boat and throws his net. Suddenly, the net is pulled down by something in the water and the man falls along. He decides to swim down to retrieve the net, which is stuck on a bunch of rocks. However, a huge swarm of fish begins to surround him and then kill him. In Scotland, biologist Charlie is on a research mission sent by the Institute of Marine Biology in Germany. Her co-worker Raheem sends her instructions to map a specific section of the seabed using OVs, which are autonomous underwater vehicles. At that moment, Charlie sees an alarm on the computer and discovers that one of the OVs has stopped working, so she goes out on a boat to check on it. It turns out the OV is stuck in the chains of a buoy, thus Charlie dives underwater to untangle it. As she works, she can't help sensing something strange surrounding her, but she can't see anything. Nervous, she finishes the untangling quickly and resurfaces, only to discover her boat has drifted away from her. Charlie swims as fast as possible and gets back to it just in time. Sometime later, Charlie receives co-workers Jess and Thomas, who will help her get the OV operational again. Thomas is surprised to find burned parts inside, but Charlie swears that she doesn't know how it happened. The duo leaves as soon as the repairs are done, and now Charlie feels very lonely, so she goes to a pub where she meets fisherman Douglas and they end up spending the night together. The next morning, Charlie takes Douglas with her to launch the repaired OV. It goes well, but before they leave, Douglas notices something weird floating in the water. Charlie grabs it and sets it on fire as she explains it's methane hydrate, which is released by algae and then freezes. Sometimes a few pieces break free and float to the surface, however there are tons of them surrounding them now, which isn't normal. Charlie records it all and later sends it to the Institute for Professor Lehman and her other co-workers to analyze. Lehman asks Charlie to investigate if this is happening anywhere else in the area. Meanwhile in Canada, Leon and a co-worker of the Vancouver Marine Institute discover a dead orca at the beach with strange bruises on its body that could only be made by humans. Calculating the direction it came from, the duo visits the local fishermen at the cove and learns that the orca attacked their boat, which isn't normal behavior. The fishermen had no choice but to fight back to save their own lives. Later, Leon keeps an eye on the whale tracker and worries because the migrating whales haven't shown up at the usual time, which never happens. This is also causing trouble for local tourism since many people come by just to hire boat rides and watch the whales. Leon's girlfriend Lizzie runs a small boat and worries she may have to sell it if the whales don't arrive soon. The following day, Leon gets very excited when he hears signals indicating the whales have finally shown up. He calls Lizzie to let her know and is surprised to hear that all of them have come at the same time all over the coast. While Lizzie takes some tourists out on her boat including reporter Alicia, Leon heads out to do his research and is startled when a whale surfaces just to stare at him for a moment before leaving. Then Leo discovers multiple orcas advancing toward Lizzie's boat at a great speed, so he immediately goes after them to check what's happening. At that moment, a whale begins performing a few flips for the tourists, only to suddenly land directly on the boat and break it in two. People fall into the water and the orcas arrive to start feeding on them. Leon calls for help before bringing as many people as possible into his boat. Alicia manages to get aboard, but Lizzie goes back to save a child. She pushes the little girl onto the boat safely, however before she can jump in as well, an orca eats her. Meanwhile in a restaurant in France, a chef is getting the lobsters ready for cooking. He suddenly notices one of them is exuding a weird white liquid and the lobster even squirts it in his face. Furious, the chef makes two employees take care of it and the lobster ends up in the garbage disposal. Soon the chef begins to feel unwell and goes outside for fresh air, only to collapse to the ground. Sometime later, one of the employees is sent to the hospital because of fever, black vomit, and diarrhea. Doctors Sophia and Cecile hear about the chef's death, who was found with the same black vomit, and request permission for an autopsy. Cecile worries that this may be something contagious going around the restaurant staff, so she goes to talk to one of the cooks and learns about the lobster incident. Afterward she goes to check on the other cook that handled the lobster, who has missed work today. Unfortunately by the time Cecile makes it to the cook's apartment, she's already dead. At that same time in the hospital, the first cook goes through a cardiac arrest and Sophia with her team try to save him, but sadly he doesn't make it. In the meantime, Leon is trying to deal with his grief when he meets an astrophysicist called Samantha, who compares the sea to space and gives him her card in case he ever needs someone to talk to. Then Leon visits the port offices and is shocked to learn that humpback whales have been attacking ships all over the area. Usually they're only aggressive to protect their babies, but it's not mating season and only big whales have been seen around. Leon also notices that the ships are covered with way more mussels than normal, so he takes a few for his research. In the Norwegian Sea, Professor Sigurd is brought to a charter ship hired by Havestad Energy, where he meets with his old friends Captain Jasper and Tina, who works as Havestad's compliance officer. They show him footage of the area where Havestad is looking for gas and oil, which has been covered with ice worms feeding with frozen methane. They're multiplying at an alarming speed, but when their camera tries to get closer, a strange interference interrupts the recording. Afterward Sigurd gets to study one of these worms up close and notices they have different claws from usual, they're bigger, and their reproduction is happening faster as well. He tells Tina this must be a new species and that she should consult an expert in the field, but Tina refuses because she wants to work with him. At first Sigurd refuses because the two of them have a past and because he doesn't like Havestad's shady practices against the environment, but Tina says she'll let him sign all the reports to avoid hiding information and he accepts. Later, Sigurd and Tina bring their discovery to Lehman's lab and she agrees it must be a new species. The really disturbing part is that these worms are going through the ice on the seafloor even though there isn't anything for them to feed on, as if they were self-destructing. Tina must report this to Huvestad, and Raheem gets annoyed that a company gets a say before they can release new discoveries to the world. Afterward, Sigurd and Tina have a meeting with members of Huvestad, who want to know how to solve this quickly so they can keep on digging. Tina convinces they need more samples before they can make a decision, so the board approves another trip. On their way out, Sigurd offers Tina to take her home, but he's disappointed to see her boyfriend is already there for her. During their second exploration, the camera reveals that the worms have gotten even bigger. As a test, they activate the ship's drill, but it immediately begins malfunctioning. Suddenly the ship starts shaking and swaying before something explodes underwater. Sometime later, they bring this issue to Lehman again, and she explains that the drill released the trapped methane and caused the explosion. If the ship had been smaller, it would have been destroyed. From what they can see on the scans, the bacteria mat is also eating its way through the ice, and if they reach the bottom of the seabed, it'll be disastrous for marine life. Since this is getting serious, Tina invites Sigurd to come with her to an energy council meeting to find out if other scientists have also seen the worms. Back to Charlie, she's doing some work at the pub and sends Jess a birthday message before taking a break with Douglas. Jess is currently with Thomas working on another expedition in a boat, and when Jess sees Charlie's message, she starts recording a video for her. Suddenly the computers start to malfunction and weird readings appear on the screens. The ship begins to shake as the sea underneath takes a weird consistency and swallows it down, killing Thomas and Jess. While Raheem and Charlie are devastated to hear the bad news, weird things continue to happen in the sea. In Venice, the locals are shocked to discover that the waters are suddenly full of jellyfish. Meanwhile, Leo shows the mussel samples to Alicia and other scientists at the Vancouver Institute, who are shocked to see the results. These mussels are much bigger than usual and their rate of reproduction is too fast, so they could be a new species or a mutation. They also notice a white substance coming out of them, so they'll have to test it too. Then Leo asks for permission to do an autopsy on the dead orca because even if it died from its wounds, its weird behavior needs an explanation. There are no signs of infection and nothing weird in its stomach. However, Leon is shocked to find a strange white clot in the dead orca's brain stem. They think it's most likely a fungus, but they'll have to run even more tests to confirm it. Later, while they analyze the pattern of the whale's attacks and other anomalies, Leon recognizes that they've all happened in the migration path of the whales. Wanting answers, Leon takes a boat with his co-worker and Alicia to the middle of the ocean, where he dives in and finds the pod of whales he tracks sleeping. Very carefully, he manages to place a camera on one of their backs, but suddenly they wake up and start acting strangely. Leon swims quickly and returns to the boat, which leaves right before the whales hit it. Sometime later, Leon is alerted that the camera has come off the whale, so he rushes to retrieve it from the ocean. In France, Cecile runs some tests on the blood from the 3 cooks and even double checks with her own blood. She reports to Sophia that it's a bacterium called Vibrio vulnificus, which produces toxins when it comes into contact with blood and causes infections. However, these infections are very rarely fatal, and what these 3 people had is a new mutation that actually consumes the person's blood at an alarming rate. Sophia informs her she's heard of more deaths with the same symptoms in a restaurant up at the coast, so it's spreading. In a car wash nearby, an employee starts feeling dizzy as a client yells at him, only to suddenly throw up black vomit and collapse. He's immediately taken to the hospital, where Sophia notices that there are 2 more cases like this coming. She discusses theories with Cecile, who discards that the infection may be airborne because they'd have even more sick people. Then it hits her, the infection must be in the water system because the lobster was thrown in the garbage disposal. While a special team closes up the car wash and takes water samples, Cecile sends her children to stay with her ex-husband and reminds them not to drink tap water. Meanwhile, Sigurd travels to Switzerland to meet with Sato, a representative of Mifune Industries. Sigurd knows they're losing ships to the recent trouble in the oceans and gives them an envelope with his findings about the worms. Later, Sato takes this information to the company owner Mifune, revealing they already knew about the worms. Mifune orders his employees to find out where Sigurd's loyalties lay since Huvestad is the competition. In the evening, Sigurd meets with Tina and demands to know if she truly only wanted to see him for work. Tina admits that she missed him and they end up spending the night together. The next day, Sato calls Sigurd and shares his own information. They've found the same worms in China, Japan, and India. Sato also implies that Huvestad doesn't have an exploration license and that Tina lied to him. Seconds later, Sigurd receives a video from Sato that shows Huvestad's practices are harmful to nature. Sigurd calls Tina to tell her about the worms in the other areas but doesn't mention the video. Their conversation ends abruptly because Tina is currently with her boyfriend, who doesn't know she cheated on him. In Germany, Charlie returns to the Institute because she wants to watch the footage of the search for Jess and Thomas' sunk ship with Raheem and Lehman. The bodies haven't been found yet, but the camera shows a mysterious white substance floating around the ship which defies explanation. At the same time in Canada, Leon and his co-workers watch the footage from the whale camera, noticing the whales are diving deeper than usual. In the end, they find the same white substance surrounding the whales and a strange sound that doesn't sound anything like a whale's song. In the meantime, in South Africa, a couple is having a nice moment on the beach when suddenly the girl is pinched by a crab. They turn around and notice an insane amount of crabs emerging from the sea and invading the city. The couple tries to escape on a bike, only to end up falling on the streets as the crabs surround them. In France, Sophia and Cecile explain their discovery to the government, but they don't have a cure for it yet. They ask for all fishing to be stopped and for water systems to be shut down, but the government doesn't want to do it because of the potential economic consequences. Later, Cecile watches the news and learns that the same crab invasion is now also happening in Brazil, Japan, India, and Morocco. Back to Sigurd, he and Tina board Jasper's ship again to find out the spread of the ice worms. The screen reveals there's absolutely no life in the area, and Jasper confirms that Huvestad's ships have been around here the last few weeks. Sigurd tells Tina that Huvestad has lied to her and in the guise of laying pipes they have breached the terms of their permit. Tina is hurt that he knew about this and didn't tell her sooner, showing a lack of trust in her. Sadly, Sigurd admits he indeed doesn't trust her because of the troublesome history they share, so an argument ensues until Tina walks off. Later, when Sigurd tells Lehman what happened, the professor says it's very possible that Tina didn't know. She also advises Sigurd not to leak the story, because Huvestad will just blame it all on Tina. In Canada, the Institute learns that their weird mussels have also been found in Madagascar, Uganda, and Paraguay. To their shock, they all have the same genetic barcode as theirs, which should be impossible. They suspect the white substance found in the whale's brain is the same that the mussel was leaking the other day, but sadly it decomposed as soon as it touched air, so Leon will have to get another sample. Leon returns to the port offices, but this time he isn't allowed in because it's become a restricted area. He pretends to leave, only to return seconds later to jump over the fence. Unfortunately, he isn't sneaky enough and soon the guards are chasing after him until they arrest him. However, the port's boss gives Leon a chance and makes him talk to Sato, who quickly worries when he hears everything the Institute has discovered. Sometime later, Alicia points out that they should check with other organizations to see if they've heard the sound they noticed in the whale recording before, so Leon tells her to contact Samantha. In France, a bunch of boxes labeled biohazard are brought to the university so Cecile can run some tests on the crabs that were sent from Morocco. They have the same weird white substance inside their bodies, and when she tests it with human blood, the same infection starts feeding on it. This means it isn't just the water, the seafood isn't safe for consumption either. Afterwards, Cecile and Sophia discuss that the shell color indicates these are the vent crabs, which usually can't survive on land. They're either a mutation or a new species. Meanwhile, Charlie returns to Scotland and discovers she has a message from Jess recorded right before she drowned. To deal with her grief, she watches it a couple of times, only to discover the white substance appearing on the window. She also notices there's a weird noise in the recording, and when she compares it to the footage from the underwater camera, she confirms they're the same. She immediately calls Raheem and asks him to share this with Lehman. At the same time, Sigurd tries contacting Tina on her work phone since she won't pick up her personal number, only to learn she doesn't work at Huvestad anymore. Afterward, he goes to see Lehman, who tells him of a slide in Japan caused by the ice worms. This slide was small, but it could be an alert of bigger disasters happening, and Sigurd points out the worms are only appearing in areas where they can do the most damage to mankind. Lehman thinks that's crazy, but Raheem takes the chance to tell her about Charlie's discovery. However, even after hearing Charlie out and seeing the matching wavelengths, Lehman still thinks it's just the same glitch on the comm signal and not a sign of anything. Charlie insists she's onto something and shows that before all the ships sunk, there was a spike in water temperature above a vent that is supposed to be dormant. Lehman refuses to believe there's a force on Earth that could take the water from the vent to the ship and yells at Charlie, forbidding her from going down there to investigate. Sometime later, Sigurd learns that the International Council for the Protection of the Ocean has called for an urgent meeting in Switzerland. He calls Sato to explain he wants to go to see the council because he has a theory that all these incidents are probably connected, and in return Sato gives him Leon's number so they can compare notes, promising to get him a place in the big meeting. After calling Leon to share the information they have, Sigurd goes home and is surprised to find Tina inside. He tries apologizing for not trusting her, but Tina just says she's tired of lying bosses and announces that she is going away alone. Hurt, Sigurd tells her that he can't imagine life without her, but Tina only responds goodbye before leaving. Later, Sigurd checks out Leon's footage and realizes that the noise is the same as the one Charlie identified. He quickly sends it to the Institute, and this is enough proof to send a Deepwater OVE for further testing. Lehman also authorizes Sigurd to go along. While Sigurd brings the OVE and Leon's footage to Charlie, everyone in the Institute gets a warning about a tsunami forming near the coasts of Norway, Denmark, and Scotland. Raheem tries to contact Charlie, but she left the phone behind while saying goodbye to Sigurd, who is now taking off in a helicopter. At the same time that Douglas is arriving to visit Charlie, Lehman manages to get in contact with Sigurd, who immediately tells the pilot to wait. He runs to warn Charlie, who wants to go after Douglas to save him too, but there isn't enough time. Sigurd drags her into the helicopter and it flies off, so Charlie has to watch her boyfriend die and her home get destroyed. In the meantime, Tina goes to see her boyfriend to break up with him. She's near the beach when she suddenly sees a bunch of birds flying by and the water begins to form a giant wave right in front of her. Everyone in the area begins running away and Tina tries to get help from her boyfriend, who escapes in his car alone even though he did see her. Knowing there's no hope, Tina gets in her own car and leaves a message for Sigurd, saying, "I cannot imagine my life without you," either right before the wave kills her too. All news outlets over the world cover this disaster, which caused thousands of deaths. Charlie leaves Scotland and Raheem tries to take care of her while Sigurd goes home and finds Tina's message, which causes him to have a breakdown as he plays it on repeat. Soon Cecile holds a press conference, attended by Samantha, Alicia, and Sato while the others watch it on TV. She shares everything she's discovered about the crabs and how she believes it's connected to all the weird things happening, even saying the deaths caused by the tsunami could have been prevented. After the conference is over, Sigurd calls Sato to ask for a meeting with both Cecile and Leon. In the evening, Cecile and Sigurd meet through a video call and discuss the possibility of all these events being strategically planned. Cecile even theorizes that whoever is doing this is learning from previous events because the infected lobsters were fished but the crabs came to town themselves. The next day, Sigurd meets with Leon, Charlie, Cecile, and Raheem at the Institute and they try to convince Layman of their theory. They think there's a mysterious sentient being that is coordinating all the animals to cause these attacks to get back at humanity for how they've ruined the planet. However, Layman refuses to believe it, saying this goes against all the foundations of science, so she won't endorse Sigurd's presentation for the council. Afterward, Sigurd informs Sato that Layman isn't coming, but Sato isn't worried because he thinks they have enough proof. Raheem and Cecile chat for a while and think that this being's actions are defensive, not aggressive. Later in the evening, Sigurd notices Leon's bracelet and hears a story about the symbol on it, which his mother gave him for his curiosity because it means unknown. Sigurd likes the symbol and draws it on paper, inspiring him to call the mysterious being The following day, the team brings their presentation to the council, explaining they want funding to make contact with and ask it to stop. Unfortunately, the council thinks the idea of nature attacking humans for revenge is ridiculous. They don't consider there's enough proof and are suspicious of the fact the team has connections to Mifune Industries and Hubestad but no support from any of the actual science organizations they work for. After the disappointing meeting, Alicia brings Samansa to meet the team with some big news. This weird signal they found near the beaches has also been picked up in Antarctica and the Arctic Ocean. Samantha agrees with the team's theory and wants to join them. Meanwhile, Sato and Sigurd have a chat with Mifune, who approves of the theory too and has decided to fund the project. Afterward, Sigurd tells the details of the mission to the rest of the team, explaining it's very dangerous so he won't judge anyone that wants to quit now. Charlie has no relatives so it's easy for her to accept, but Raheem informs her he won't join the project because he's worked enough so now he wants to spend time with his family. Charlie can't help feeling betrayed. The rest of the team does accept to go, but they visit their families before leaving. Cecile doesn't tell her children of the danger, but in private, she arranges all the paperwork with her ex-husband in case something happens. Sigurd spends his evening hearing Tina's message until he's finally capable of deleting it. Soon the team leaves on Jasper's ship and by analyzing all their information, they calculate her must be somewhere in the Mali Deep located in the Arctic Ocean. They contact Mifune to inform him of their plans, and he makes sure they'll keep both video and written logs of everything. Jasper teaches them about all the security cameras the ship has, but Alicia still goes around interviewing everyone for her own video logs. The scientists still run tests to keep their intel up to date and Charlie works on maintenance for the submarine with crew member Luther. After traveling for a while, the ship's equipment starts flickering with interference and the scientists manage to capture a signal. Samantha immediately begins designing a message to send back by using Earth's signal with slight modifications. She adds a slight spike and the sound of a baby's cry to indicate they want to communicate. If returns a message with the same spike, they'll confirm its intelligence. Meanwhile, Cecile and Sigurd confirm that the white substance controls the animals by inserting itself into their nervous system, as if forming an army that follows its orders. Later, Jasper stops the ship and while they transmit Samantha's message, Charlie and Luther take the submarine for a test drive. After just a few seconds, the radar detects something big in the water, but the duo can't see anything. In the ship, their sensors also detect this mysterious mass and pick up another signal before the computers start flickering again and they notice the mass is coming closer. At that moment, Luther notices they've lost their fans and are running out of air, so he has to switch to backup. He tries to inform the ship of this, but they've lost communications too. Worried, Luther wants to abort the mission, but Charlie asks him to turn off the lights because she thinks there's something out there. Jasper and Sigurd try to tell them to come back but their messages won't go through, making Samantha and Leon realize that although they stopped broadcasting, the signal is still coming in. The situation in the submarine is too tense and Luther decides they're going back. As the submarine makes its way back into the ship, Charlie notices the glowing white substance floating in the water. Afterward, Samantha reports that they've made contact with her because it sent back their signal with an alteration to the baby's cry, meaning it understood what they did and replied in kind. By assembling the wavelengths of the message they received, she can create an image that she can send as a new message. Meanwhile, Alicia is checking out the submarine when she suddenly notices a glow in the hangar pool. The ship lights start flickering until they go completely out, only to come back in a few seconds. To the crew's horror, they see on the cameras that Alicia is unconscious and bleeding on the hangar floor. Cecile immediately rushes her to the medical bay and finds cerebral fluid in her nose, meaning she fell and hit her head pretty hard. It'll be hard to keep her alive. Later, Samantha tells the team that during the voltage, there was a blast of sound that emanated from inside the ship. While Jasper orders his whole crew to double-check their equipment to make sure the signal isn't a machine malfunctioning, Leon visits Alicia and notices her body is covered in strange spots. Cecile says they aren't blood clots, so she asks the others to hold Alicia down while she does a lumbar puncture. After running some tests on the spinal fluid, Cecile confirms that Alicia is infected with the same white substance the injected in the animals and is trying to fuse with her cells. At that moment, Charlie admits she saw some glowing in the water, and theorizes it followed them back inside. The hangar is immediately secured and samples are taken for testing. Then Sato calls Mifune to tell him about the accident, and Mifune informs them that the crabs are now appearing in the Adriatic region too. In the meantime, Samansa finishes designing the message and makes the wavelengths look like the graphic of evolution because she wants the to know that humans also come from the ocean. The message is sent, and now the team will take turns waiting in front of the computer for an answer. While Charlie watches the pool from the window, she suddenly notices the water starts glowing, creating all kinds of beautiful shapes with the light. At the same time, the computer picks up a response from that also creates an image. Moments later, Mifune arrives by helicopter and the team shows him the recording of the lights in the pool as Sigur explains it's a single-cell organism that can fuse into a larger multicellular mass capable of taking shapes. Next, Samantha shows the image from the message, which represents the superocean surrounding the supercontinent that existed 250 million years ago when Earth's continents were joined. This means the has a collective memory that passes from generation to generation through their DNA. The probably sent a message to tell people that they've been here since the beginning and won't let humans destroy the environment, but Sigur thinks the responses are a sign the is willing to talk. When Cecile informs the team Alicia is stable, Charlie shares a theory. She thinks that the wasn't trying to kill Alicia when they entered her, it was actually trying to find out about the crew. It was the first time they tried to send a message back, so the probably wanted to confirm humans were intelligent. Then Leon uses some whale sounds to make a new message and let the know that humans have helped animals as well. In a private room, Mifune brings Jasper some bad news. Another tsunami has destroyed most of Nigeria. During the following hours, Cecile continues to run tests and finally devises a medicine capable of destroying the infection that consumes the blood cells. Mifune wants to test it on the actual and Sigur immediately protests, saying killing the would cause irreparable damage to life in the ocean and that they're supposed to be negotiating. If the ocean dies, so will humans. An argument ensues since the team feels divided on the issue. In the end, they agree to test it only in the pool so they can later negotiate with a backup for their safety. Cecile and Luther suit up and go to the pool to drop the medicine in the water, which causes an instant effect. The lights flicker as the raises in a solid wave and screams before dying in a small explosion that breaks all the windows, makes the ship lose all power, and knocks the duo out. Cecile quickly wakes up and drags Luther inside to do CPR, but it's too late, he's already dead. All propulsion is gone too, so now the ship is just drifting, and in just a few seconds it hits a big iceberg. Suddenly the ship begins moving back and they realize the eye under them, moving the ship as it pleases. Samantha guesses that the scream from the pool must have sent a message to the ocean. The ship won't stay afloat for long though, so Jasper wants to know why they aren't killing the whole Sigur points out they got terrible consequences for just killing a small part of it, so killing it all would only make it worse. Their only solution is to try to negotiate, and Sigur makes a plan. They should inject Luther with the white substance and Charlie can use the submarine to take the body in the most concentrated area of as a message of complete obedience. Suddenly the ship shakes and they discover the has pushed them against another iceberg. They need to start evacuating soon, so Sigur tells Cecile to leave with Alicia in Mifune's helicopter. As everyone rushes to get everything for the plan ready, the brings more icebergs to surround the ship and trap it. Once Luther's body is in the submarine, Charlie dives in. For a while she sees nothing but darkness, but eventually she finds the glowing substance. At the same time the ship picks up more wavelengths. Now she's deep enough, Charlie makes a difficult decision. Luther is too far gone, so to make the message valid, Charlie will use her own body instead. People on the ship cry for her as Charlie proceeds to inject herself and lets the water enter the submarine. Soon the shows up and takes Charlie out of the submarine to slowly enter her body. This releases its power from the icebergs and the ship is free to sail again. Sometime later, Charlie's body appears on a beach. She's alive, and when she opens her eyes, they're glowing blue.
The movie opens in the Scottish Highlands in the 11th century, where we see a kid who is known only as the Boy. He brings some food to a prisoner whose name is unknown and is called One Eye, because he only has one eye. The poor guy is chained like a slave, and there are several guards around him. It turns out that One Eye is a ferocious warrior who has superhuman strength and is able to defeat all his opponents, even while bound. He is enslaved by a group of pagans who use him to fight to the death in a kind of gladiatorial combat against other prisoners. The only one who feels bad for One Eye is the boy, but he is helpless, as he is also just a slave. We also learn that One Eye has the ability to foresee events in his dreams. Later, the clan members prepare One Eye for another battle and take him to a fighting place where several masters are present to gamble. One Eye's master is called the Chieftain, and after his slave is defeated by the opponent, he sends One Eye to fight. Our protagonist then puts up a brave fight, and even though he is bound, he easily manages to beat his opponent and breaks his neck, which stuns everyone. After that, he is locked with chains like a dog and put back in a wooden cage. The boy then feeds him food and water, and even though One Eye never really speaks, it's clear he has a soft spot for the kid, or he wants to eat him. Depends on what you've seen Mads in before. Afterward, the chieftain is approached by another master of the clan who says that no one has kept One Eye for more than 5 years. He tells the chieftain his time is over now and requests to buy the warrior, but the chieftain is hesitant as he doesn't want to lose his consistent source of income. In the following days, we see One Eye going through several brutal fights, each one of which he manages to win successfully. The chieftain discusses One Eye with his clan, and they all theorize that the man has come from hell. One night, while One Eye is sleeping, he has a prophetic dream in which he finds an object in a pool. The following day, while he is washing himself in a lake, he finds a broken arrowhead and quickly hides it with him. Later that night, a man visits the chieftain and tells him about how Christians are bastards, as they killed their god, ate his flesh, and drank his blood. He states how the Christians hate pagans like them and want them gone, as they pray for their deaths. However, he claims to be better than them, as they have many gods, while the Christians have only one. The man says they need to fight against Christians, and for that reason, they need One Eye. The chieftain is hesitant to let his precious slave go, but when the man offers a lot of money, he finally agrees. The next morning, the boy offers food to One Eye as usual, after which the clan members take him out of his cage. The chieftain then asks who he is, but One Eye stays silent, after which they put a hood on his head and take him away from there chained. On the way, One Eye uses the arrowhead he had hidden to untie the chains from his neck, after which he quickly begins attacking everyone. The clan members rush to attack him, but they're no match for him, and he easily kills them. In the end, he finishes everyone except the boy and ties up the last clan. The man begins mocking him, saying he'll go to hell for this, so One Eye cuts his belly and spills his guts while the guy screams in pain. Following this, One Eye places the head of the chieftain on a nithing pole, which is a form of Norse insult trophy. As he walks away, he recalls the chieftain saying how One Eye is driven by hate, and that's how he survives, and why he never loses. The boy now has nowhere to go, so he also begins following One Eye, who allows him to come with him. The two walk for days together and rest side by side, during which the boy tries to chat with One Eye. He shows his locket and says it was gifted to him by his father, but One Eye remains silent and doesn't respond. That night, he experiences another prophetic vision, in which he sees himself and the boy with a group of men in a boat. The next day, they continue walking and soon come across a group of crusaders who have just razed a village and kidnapped a bunch of women whom they have stripped naked. They turn out to be Christians, and the leader, who is called the General, asks if they're from their clans. One Eye is mute as usual, but the boy fears for their lives and says they are Christian. The General obviously doesn't believe him and prepares to attack, but one of the crusaders stops him, saying this is the most fearsome One Eye, who has killed his master and his entire clan. Next, the General sends his son to attack him, so One Eye also prepares his axe and gets ready for the fight. But in the end, the General's son gets scared and decides to withdraw, as he can't fight against such a dangerous guy. The General asks the name of the warrior, but the boy says that he doesn't have a name, so they call him One Eye. The General then invites the duo to eat with his group and have further conversation. Later, they sit together, and the General asks what they plan to do now that they have their freedom. The boy says he wants to go home, but has no idea where it is, while One Eye stays silent. The General then reveals they are all heading from Jerusalem to reclaim the Holy Land, and says they can use a good crusader like One Eye. He says there's great honor in it, and they will be rewarded with great riches and land. One Eye isn't so sure, so a priest also tries to convince him, saying even though he may live or die, his sins will be cleansed, and he will see his loved ones. The General then asks the boy where One Eye comes from, to which the boy responds that he was brought up in hell, which is on the other side of the ocean, right beside the Denny's. After some consideration, One Eye accepts his invitation, after which he and the boy sail on a boat with the crusaders, just like he had seen in his vision. However, the group soon begins facing many obstacles such as extreme weather from thick fog, the absence of wind, and challenging ocean currents. During their time, one of the Crusaders preaches to the boy about Christ, saying how he sacrificed his life so that all of them could be free from pain and misery. He states this is why they are going to protect his land and kingdom, and he urges the boy to be strong in this crisis. However, weeks pass and the weather is still the same, which leaves the men extremely frustrated. The Crusaders continue praying to the Lord, but despite this, the situation doesn't change. They remain stranded in the middle of nowhere with increasingly minimal food and water. At one point, a desperate man ends up drinking seawater even though the others warn him that he could die. Everyone soon starts to lose patience, and the man from before continues to preach to the boy about Jesus repeatedly. During the journey, one of the men eventually passes away after drinking too much seawater, so the others throw his body into the river. Weeks later, the situation is still the same, so the Crusaders theorize that maybe they are cursed. They think the boy is the reason behind all of this, so they decide to kill him. One of the men tries to attack the kid with a knife, but before he can do anything, One Eye stabs him in the gut and throws him into the water. The other Crusaders are horrified by this and prepare their weapons to attack, but the general asks them to back off. Everyone then calms down and takes their seats, while One Eye silently makes it clear that no one can hurt the boy. At one point, a Crusader recalls how the boy said that One Eye came from hell, so he thinks they are all heading there. The scene then cuts to days later, where we see everyone on the boat lying exhausted and very weak. One Eye then gets up and fetches some water from below, which he proceeds to drink without hesitation. Upon seeing this, a man begins laughing, saying this is only going to kill him faster, so One Eye hands him the water as well. The man proceeds to drink it and is shocked to see that it's fresh water. This excites everyone, and soon they realize that the boat is actually in an estuary and no longer at sea. They all begin drinking and soon notice the first sign of land off in the distance, which fills them with happiness. Not long after, they get off the boat thinking they're in Jerusalem, but they find themselves in vast forests full of lakes and mountains, which look nothing like their Holy Land. The Crusaders immediately set out to look for supplies and signs of civilization, but they don't find anything or anyone there. They instead come across some Aboriginal burial sites, indicating that there is a settlement here. At this moment, one of the crew members, Hawk, leaves the group to venture on his own. Later, One Eye sees a vision in which he notices a man covered in mud and several other people like him. The general then says that he wants to show the locals that a man of God has arrived. One Eye ventures off on his own, and at the same time we see Hawk, who is resting nearby and hears some noises. He quickly prepares his sword and goes to confront whoever the figure is. Later, the Crusaders are resting when all of a sudden One Eye returns with a sword, and they recognize it belongs to their friend Hawk. This leaves them confused, and they begin searching for their missing friend, but he is nowhere to be seen. The Crusaders thus assume that One Eye must have killed him and worry that he is going to kill all of them one by one. Meanwhile, the general says he once had a dream about being lost and unable to find his way home, only to realize he was dead. He concludes that this isn't the Holy Land and suggests leaving, but the priest worries about their missing friend. The general says they will leave the sword for him, and if he finds it, it's God's will. He says they must continue moving to find out where they are. Following this, all of them get on the boat and proceed to sail away from there, but things take a dark turn when all of a sudden the group is targeted by a single arrow, which pierces one of their men. This sends everyone into panic, so they ready their weapons and return to the shore, but they don't see a single person in sight, leaving them shocked. Later, the group disperses in the woods to look for their attackers, but they still don't see anyone. The general finds the arrow that killed their friend and soon realizes it has a stone tip, which makes them understand that their attackers are a primitive tribe. The general says they were brought out of the mist for a reason and suggests they claim this land for his men, but the priest asks how they can do that, as they're half-starved and have already lost 3 of their Crusaders. However, the general doesn't seem worried and gives him a drink for encouragement. Next, the general gives everyone the drink, which they accept, including One Eye. He once again has prophetic visions, in which a group of primitive people attack him on a coastline and brutally beat him. Meanwhile, the drink given by the general makes everyone high, evoking different emotions, including anger and desperation. Some pray, others wander, and One Eye also collects rocks and piles them on each other. After much effort on the riverbank, the boy then watches in horror as one of the Crusaders violently tries to stab the river, while another man is seen forcing himself on his own friend. The general, on the other hand, is seen laughing and praying in the river without a care in the world. This lasts for a while, and eventually the Crusaders come to their senses and return to reality. But then Then, things take a shocking turn when they see Hawk returning, but he is completely naked and his body is covered with mud and strange carvings, resembling the markings of a primitive tribe. One Eye then recalls that this is the same man he had seen in his vision, and it seems that Hawk was kidnapped by the primitives, who made him like one of their own. Later, the group questions Hawk about what happened to him and where he was, but the man doesn't say anything. Instead, he says he can hear One Eye now, who talks perfectly. The general asks what he says, to which Hawk replies that he says they're in hell. This worries the others, and one man claims it was One Eye who brought them here, and that he is responsible for everything. The boy, who now understands One Eye, speaks up, saying One Eye says they need to leave this place, and that the forest is the only way out. Another man argues that they should go back to the boat, but the general refuses to return to the mist again. He says they need to show these tribal people that they're men of God. He suggests raising their cross and claiming this land is holy, after which the heathens will be converted, their sins will be cleansed, and a new Jerusalem will be established. However, another crusader argues and accuses the general of promising them riches in the Holy Land, which never happened, and now they're in hell. He draws his sword and goes to attack One Eye, but the latter easily defeats him and stabs his throat. He also kills another man coming to attack him, after which he finishes the first man by striking his head with an axe. While the crusaders watch in shock, One Eye then proceeds to leave and looks at the boy, who decides to follow him, and they head off. Upon seeing this, the priest says they need to follow him, but the general rushes to hug him and shockingly stabs him in the back, accusing him of turning his back on God. The injured guy proceeds to limp away, while the general says that only the man of faith deserves the riches of his new Jerusalem. Later, the general says he will build crosses up and down the river to guide the Christian brothers who will come to join them, and that they will also bring women. He says their city will stand for thousands of years, and tells Hawk that he will be his spiritual advisor, but Hawk begins to laugh at this idea, which worries the general. He then goes to the water to pray, when the primitives proceed to attack him with arrows and eventually kill him, which is also noticed by the boy and One Eye in the distance. Elsewhere, we see the injured priest and the general's son, who is still following One Eye, hoping he can guide them. They rest on the top of a hill, and the general's son wonders if he can ever forgive his father for bringing him to this place. The priest also says he came to ask forgiveness from his son since he wasn't there when his son died in the battle. The boy says that according to One Eye, the boy will find a sea, build a new boat, and be able to go home. The general's son asks what he said about him, to which the boy informs him that he will die. This leaves the man shocked, and he asks One Eye why he came here, but the latter doesn't give any answer. Next, the general's son decides to go back to be with his father, even though he is dead. He then walks away from there, while One Eye and the boy proceed to move forward. The boy expects the injured priest to come as well, but the man simply smiles at him and decides to stay and wait for his death. Sometime later, One Eye and the boy successfully reach the coastline, which One Eye had seen before in his dreams. He admires the beautiful landscape, but when he looks back, he is stunned to see a large number of primitive tribespeople. One Eye silently orders the boy not to move, then approaches the tribespeople while dropping his axe on the way. He realizes his journey is now over and decides to sacrifice himself for the sake of the kid. He soon closes his eyes, after which the tribespeople waste no time and brutally attack him, just as he has seen in his visions. One Eye eventually dies, after which the tribespeople decide to spare the boy and walk away. The movie ends as the shaken boy looks out at the ocean, and One Eye's face appears in the clouds, implying that he has returned to Valhalla.